Hello, Julian.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, is it a bird?
Is it a plane?
Is it an IT guy?
Hey, it's all of those.
It's Jack Peploe, the wingsuit IT guy.
Yay! Let's have him on.
Hi, I'm Mike Brampton.
And my name is Julian Ho.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings.
Hey, everybody. Before we jump into today's guest interview, we have a quick announcement. This week's episode is brought to you by Adaptix.
If you're a veterinarian looking to streamline your practice with cutting-edge technology, then you'll want to hear about the revolutionary 3D X-ray system from Adaptix. Forget those bulky CAT scan machines that take up an entire room.
So Adaptix's system is compact and very easily portable. It can be swiftly moved and installed, saving you time and hassle. Whether you prefer it on your desktop or on the floor for convenient patient access, Adaptix's monitor fits seamlessly into your practice.
For more information, head over to our show notes for a direct link or visit adaptix.com. That's ADAPTIX.com.
Hello?
Here he is,
Hello.
man.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, very good.
Excellent.
Good to see you.
And you?
What were these podcasts you were doing then, Jack?
No, so I dabbled with it. I launched a podcast called the Modern Veterinary Practice podcast, interviewing different people within the industry. It was fairly early days for me, so I didn't know too many people, but it was a good excuse just to meet different people with different ideas and look at ways in which you could sort of drive efficiency within practice, and met some really interesting people. I had some really interesting conversations, and it's something which I plan to pick up again. It's just it's in the pipeline, and we're trying to align it with what we did at the vet show, because we hosted a theatre there, and that was a bit of a wild experience and a bit unique for us because we've never hosted our own stream. But again, that was on the same theme, and it was really successful received. And so I think it's something we are going to try and pick up again and try to promote, which will be good.
Right, that sounds interesting. Is this the company that you started age 16?
One of them, yes. Technology focused, but yes, essentially it was my first business I set up when I was 16 was a computer build company. It was just essentially I was getting frustrated at school. I realized that my sort of grades weren't a great representation. I haven't actually opened up my A-levels. Not quite as good as Toby's excuse, but no, for me it was very much I realized my grades weren't going to be a good representation, so I needed to go and do something. And so it was something there I could keep myself occupied and find something to do and stay out of trouble. And that's where it essentially started, and then got opportunities to help out with different things. And ironically, one of my first clients, and still a client today, was actually a mixed multi-site vet practice. And all it was, I grew up on a farm, and one of the partners of one of these vet practices happened to be the person responsible for looking after the cattle. And he just kept on coming to me asking for support with the computers, and that's where it all started. And eventually he decided to bring me in practice and went, look, we've got a serious problem. It's causing us issues every day for 15 minutes. The whole practice goes down. Can you help us? And it was like, yeah, of course. So that's where it all started.
How cool is that?
That's amazingly cool. And this is just to get the timeline right. This was after you'd been offered a job by your school to run their IT.
Which didn't go down very well with the IT bods. They were not happy. And ironically, I got dragged into the headmaster's study and got an absolute rollicking for something I didn't do. And essentially, I gave these IT bods some tools to monitor the network. Because back then, we had 2 meg, and that was like 2 meg of internet. And that was meant to be incredible, absolutely super fast, but painfully slow. And of course, when you're at school, everyone's utilizing the internet for downloading things and playing games and all this sort of stuff. So of course, it was painfully slow. So for me, I wanted to try and find the culprits, lock it down so I could actually get good use of the internet. So I thought, actually, I'll just try and help these guys out because they're not managing it very well. Gave them these tools, and then they decided to use the tools on me. What they didn't realize is that I put in the blockers so that they couldn't monitor me. Yet they tried to drag me in. So in the end, I shouldn't repeat this, but I ended up nuking their computer. So sending a signal down, which essentially causes it to go poof. Then yeah, that was that. So that was my job opportunity out the window.
So Julian, if he stops smiling at any moment, give me a nod and we'll kill it, because I'm slightly nervous now.
Okay, how much do you want, Jack? Oh, hold on. I can see you're in my account already. Oh,
I'll take what I can, whatever you're happy with.
There's all £3.50 of this. You utter swine, sir.
It's a coffee for the morning, isn't it?
Yeah, expensive coffee. Yeah. And this was in a barn or a
Yeah,
shed
so
or
originally it was in the dorm room. That's where I started, and again that was by accident. I did know I was launching a limited company, but the only reason why I did that was back then that was the only way you could actually trade and source hardware, so the different computer components. So it was ironic. It was having to speak to my mum and say, I'm really sorry, I need you to come to the bank with me, because of course they wouldn't talk to you, they wouldn't entertain you, they wouldn't open up a bank account because you had to be 18. My mum was the director of the original business for the first 2 years, and then hooray was the day that I actually got to say goodbye. And yeah, so when I left school, so after A levels, I rented out a barn, and that's where it all started. So along with the cows, and I still remember the days where water was leaking through the walls into the room, because it was literally a shed. It was the sort of the best I could do and the best I could afford at the time.
gosh,
Did your mum think,
I
I want
think
to start a limited company? Had she got any inkling that this was coming?
no, I don't think any of my family did. My dad was very much, because I was the eldest, it was you have to go to university, and that's just the known thing.
Mm.
And I was very much rebelling. And so I remember he dragged me to Sainsbury's, dragged me to PC World. And I remember sitting down with the manager of PC World and him just sitting down with me and going, I'm really sorry, Jack, you haven't got the necessary life experience. My mum was very much upbeat. She was a little bit more open to a bit of risk, and she understood that I had that flair to do something a little bit different. She knew that sort of the academia wasn't going to do me well. So she was a bit more open, while my dad was a little bit more nervous around the risk aspect. He's a farmer, but running a farm is very different to running a business, two different skill sets. And so he was just a little bit cautious, and he was trying to do the right thing, which I fully understood. But yeah, my mum was very much a little bit more open-minded and very keen, but both extremely supportive.
If I compare and contrast, Julian follows a different path into his business and the way he's done things. He went through the traditional vet school route into working in a practice.
oh yeah. So my veterinary practice was already established. Someone else had set it up. Someone else had bought into it and eventually bought the partner off. So you could buy into an existing.
Yeah, it's
You
not
didn't
an
have to
inheritance.
make one up from scratch.
I think both have pros and cons. When you take on an existing business, yes, you have got some existing framework to build upon, but you've also got lots of problems to potentially fix and overcome. Because it does depend on the reason why you're buying into the practice or the business in the first place. Generally, it's through either there's an opportunity, or it's through frustrations and being granted that opportunity to potentially do something different. And that comes with its own challenges, which is extremely tough. Going down the startup route, I suppose the positive of starting so young is you don't really fully truly understand the risks.
Yeah.
So you're a little bit more open-minded and willing to go for it, which is one thing that I think I was. It's not to say that, like I say, I was careless. I definitely wasn't careless, but it was very much, what's the worst that's going to happen? I was 16. The worst that's going to happen is I'll just have to go and try for that job back at Sainsbury's or Toys R Us and follow the standard path that a lot of people do. I'm not exactly thick. It's just I don't follow the normal trend, and I probably could go and get a job.
I'm just comparing and contrasting, because that would be my attitude to one of my young sons starting a business and doing whatever it is they want to do. But I remember 30 years ago now, quite vividly, when I set up Thames Medical, my mom and my dad had obviously were of the generation that had come through the job for life almost,
Yes.
and that you follow through and you work hard for the company until you get your gold watch at 65 or 60 when you leave. And their reaction was abject horror. But where's the
Got to
security?
get a trade, son. Get a trade.
Where's the security? And I was saying to them, where's the security now?
Yes. I suppose with my mum, she used to, at a very light scale, used to run a little video shop. And so that was her aspect of entrepreneurial flair. And so did my granddad. He was quite a unique and very smart character. And my granddad was involved with constructing microscopic motors and worked with the likes of Rolls-Royce and NASA with some projects, which was really fascinating. And there's always been that sort of engineering background. And I suppose that's possibly where, without realizing, I captured these things. And I suppose that's possibly why my mum was a little bit more open-minded. And of course, my dad has never worked for a blue chip company or a corporate. He's a farmer, done very well. But it's his way. It's the way that we've known as a family for many generations.
Right.
So I expect that's possibly why they both reacted in the way that they did. Granddad was a fascinating character, and he was the chap that got me involved with flight originally, and just was a little bit more open-minded with the different things that he did. Yeah, a great character, and have a lot of respect for him.
Excellent. There are so many things that I don't understand about IT.
Yeah.
Generally. You're helping out BSAVA at the moment
Yes.
with the program of change, and you are a hugely valuable asset and colleague to us at the moment. Not least of which because you understand how to turn computers on, and most of us struggle, and we can't get onto Microsoft Teams ever. But at the age of 16, you were telling your IT team at school how to run things. We didn't have computers when I was at school.
Yeah, no, so it was becoming more in fashion. Our school was quite forward thinking in the sense of it was an enforcement for everyone to have laptops. And so it was a new thing. We were the first year to have this implemented. And it was still fairly new though. So giving you an example, computer studies, which is what I studied for my A levels, I think during the AS we had about 28 students that were part of the class. By the end of the A levels, we had two, me and one other. So it was still fairly new, and we didn't have ICT as a thing to do whilst at school. So learning your basic word processing and just basic collaborative tools. I was a little bit of a pain in the backside, no real change there. And so I suppose I got frustrated because everything to me felt quite logical. I don't know why. Computers they're relays at the end of the day, at the moment at least. And so it's fairly straightforward. It's normally, like I say, the nut behind the wheel that's the problem, not necessarily the machine itself. It's how you utilize it, it's how I see it.
My IT consultant, the BSAVA once said, when I described what was going on my computer, he said, yes, it's a Pibcop problem. I said, what's that? He said, problem is between computer and chair.
Yeah, we've got a few different examples of those. But yeah, no, typically it is that. It's how we're utilizing the technology that's the problem, or that it's something fairly obvious because the computers, they will just do as they're told in most cases. I know it seems ironic to say that. And so for me, everything seemed quite logical. And so I got bored. I'm not sure if you ever remember the computer game Doom.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I ended up embedding that within the word processor so that I could be busy away working on that whilst everyone else was learning how to touch type and things. So I did keep myself occupied. And like I say, it was one of these things where the internet was particularly slow, but Google was coming out. Netscape was your main browser. Ask Jeeves was a big thing back then. And so you had this wealth of information. And I just interrogated. I just looked into different things and learned different things. And the computer building just came from the fact that I remember this chap came over to my parents and put together a computer. And I just watched him. And I thought, this can't be that difficult. I put some money down, a couple of £100 just to put something together. I got electrocuted far too many times. I think hence the wild hair. I learned lots in the process. And again, it was whilst I was at school, I was part of a young enterprise scheme, which was a great concept. But for me, one of the frustrations was very much there were lots of chiefs, not enough Indians. No one was getting down to the work. They all wanted to have their say, but not do anything about it. So I actually ended up going my own separate way, challenged them and said, whoever makes the most profit wins overall. And that was the sort of overall goal. And that's where it all started. And I suppose I recognized a few people identified that I was fairly au fait with computers. And one of my first opportunities was actually a line marking company. So they do all the sports pitches. They've delved into the Olympics and football stadiums and all that sort of stuff. And one of the parents actually came to me and said, look, I've got a few issues with my computers, but would you mind just coming in and helping? And I remember my first job, it was like £250 a month. And I thought, this is fantastic. The benefit with computers is that there's real-time learning all the time. And there's plenty of resources. And especially with the capability of AI, you can go out and query things straight away immediately. And obviously you've got to be a little bit savvy with querying these things, but the information is so accessible. There really is very little excuses to learn new things. And so that's where it came about. And like I said, having that open-minded and being more solution-based thinking, that's how I typically work. Is I'm very good at interrogating and finding solutions to problems. That's just my mindset. So I don't see things as a challenge. I see it as an opportunity, if anything. And I don't see it as a blocker. I see it as something that we can do good with. So that's just typically how I would work. And that's why the program of change is so exciting, because there's lots of great things that we can do with the BSAVA, which is extremely exciting. So it's going to be a really good project.
That's fantastic. You've mentioned a number of acronyms here. You've said BSAVA, which of course is British Small Animal Veterinary Association.
Yes.
But you've also mentioned just now AI.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, which is a buzzword. So are you suggesting that the BSAVA should be wired to AI?
Absolutely. We had an interesting debate at SPIVS which was great. But yeah, whether we're going to get to that level, I really honestly don't know. Obviously, you've got the different stages of AI, and we're very much at that narrow stage now where it's focused on a particular task. And whether we're going to get to that sort of general AI phase, because artificial intelligence is one of these buzz terms that sort of does frustrate me, because is it truly intelligent? The argument is no, it's just a lot of logic that's integrated into the system. I use things like ChatGPT on a day-by-day basis. It saves me a huge amount of time, but I wouldn't necessarily go and say that's truly intelligent. When we get into that sort of general and super intelligent stage, that's where it gets to the point where we potentially could be replaced. Because one of the comments that was raised at Spivs was, are we going to be, or are you guys going to be replaced as veterinary professionals? And my argument is, yes, if we go down the track of the prediction of where people anticipate AI to go to, then yes, there is that possibility. Obviously, being supported by other technologies, it can't just be the AI that's going to do that.
No.
But I don't know. If we don't truly understand how we function as human beings, I don't understand how we can go and create this superhuman or super being. I personally don't see it happening. But excited by the concept.
Can you imagine? Sarah Connor, bring in Fluffy now. Wait a minute.
He's just over there looking over me right now. I'm very excited by the concept of AI and what it can do. And I think, like I say, we've got to not necessarily fear it, especially at the moment. Don't fear the technology. I've utilized tools like ChatGPT, and I've used it to educate people within practice with the sort of things that you can do. And it's a huge enabler, even doing the most basic things, such as, I don't know, if you were to speak into your phone with the notes of your consultation you've just completed and asked to put it in SOAP format, it will do that all for you and summarize it, which is fantastic. If you're wanting to have a differential diagnosis, it will provide it to you. And again, it's taking the attitude that you're the expert. The AI isn't. It's just providing you with lots of different data sources, and you've always got to question that information. But sometimes it might give you a different perspective on things. And even to the extent of things like post-operative notes, etc., or advice for clients, you can say, oh, look, can you go and produce some post-operative notes for, I don't know, I take my Labrador that's just having hip dysplasia surgery, but take into consideration, for example, the fact that the animal lives in the middle of a city. It will give you a full document within seconds, and it will fill out things that you possibly won't even considered. And it doesn't mean that you're not good enough for that. It's just you're really busy, and on a day-to-day basis, you don't have time to consider these things. And it will remove those grammatical issues and the things that you just lack time with.
We can't read widely enough in a given space of time to ensure that we've encompassed every aspect of these things. I used ChatGPT last month to write a system of care for kennels.
Yes.
Standard operating procedure for dogs with diarrhea. And it was within 3 seconds it came back. And the reason it took so long was because I saw the first version and realized I missed out including legislative procedures. And so it came back then with those up to date.
And this is where prompts are so incredibly important. So the way in which you ask the question, and this is what I really enjoy. So I actually do a presentation where it's completely focused on the utilization of AI within practice, and specifically looking at how you can, utilize ChatGPT. And it's really interesting because you'll have, I don't know, I did one with Vet Dynamics very recently, and there was about sort of 20 practice owners all within the room. And no word of a lie, I would say at least 10 of them had different responses from ChatGPT. And it was all how they asked the question. And so I asked them to create it was a marketing campaign. So I said, imagine you're a receptionist, you've got a few moments, which I know doesn't exist, and you need to create a marketing campaign to encourage new puppy owners to come in and take advantage of a free health check, but also to upsell the opportunity for an ongoing health plan. One of the people in the audience actually ended up creating a load of code for their website to go and upload. And I sort of asked the question, like, how did you end up with that? I don't think even I could do that. But it's amazing how you ask it. And it's all about that sort of context aspect. So the one thing that we always forget is to state what it is that we do, and we are. I am a veterinary professional looking to provide advice to my client who has a 1-year-old Labrador who has hip dysplasia, and then you're going to get the most accurate response, rather than going, I need to create post-operative notes for a 1-year-old Labrador, because then it's going to dumb it down for the general person like myself. So it's amazing how, like I say, if you can just master those few advisors or recommendations for creating that sort of perfect prompt, it is absolutely superb tool. And especially now with the ways in which you can integrate it with different things. One of the things that I've massively taken advantage of, which I think applies to management, not necessarily for the frontline team, but every email that comes into my inbox now, the way it works, it goes, I don't even look at it. It will go straight into this AI engine. It will interrogate the email. It will actually go and highlight all the tasks that need to be achieved to complete the response for that email. It will put a time frame against it, and it will then go and book it in my diary, which is really cool.
How we managed to get you booked?
I don't want to say, Mike, but yeah, maybe.
I wonder what questions we asked.
It is amazing. I think people feel threatened by AI, partly because of the Terminator and things like that, but also partly because it's technology way beyond anything they can understand, and they may have had bad experiences with previous iterations of it that weren't so good. And also because when they Google something, they type in 4 or 5 words with a question mark at the end. And so you're not going to get the same sort of answer there as you would with AI.
No, there's a couple of things there. One of the reasons why I ended up going into the veterinary sector was purely because of the relationship that vets and the other veterinary professionals had with technology. It wasn't particularly great. And that was down to a number of different reasons. And I think that was complete reliance on practice management systems, seeing them as the go-to people for technology, because that's how it used to work. And also, these are software developers. I'm not saying they're bad software developers, but that's their specialism. And so they're not necessarily going to guide the industry and improve the industry in a set way. And especially with the way it was, there wasn't huge competition. There were only a set number of vendors. So realistically, we didn't evolve. And if anything, it's that vicious cycle that you go through, which is, my computers are extremely slow and I hate my technology, which was the typical response. It just does never work. And you've got computers that are 10 years old, so are you really surprised? And then they scratch their head and go, oh, that's a very good point. But there was never anyone there to really go and query that and to be in that impartial position. So that's put us in a negative stead in a way. We've then got the aspect of COVID. So COVID has forced us to make that transition and to transform as an industry. And I have to say, hats off to everyone within the industry. They've done an absolutely incredible job, because it was one of the few industries that was enforced to continue to function with increased loads during that period. It was an extremely stressful period. And the industry embraced the technology and did the best they could. But it was in some ways very rushed, not particularly considered. It was very much I need a telehealth solution because I need to be able to do video calls with my clients. But the solutions were never properly considered. We never really understood the reason why we needed it. We didn't think of the bigger picture. So what it meant was the solutions ended up getting onboarded in a rushed fashion, not understanding what these solutions could potentially do, which resulted in most cases, failed integrations, which again added to that frustration with the technology. Now, with the AI aspect, obviously, that's, like I said, that's not necessarily helped us as such. I think focusing on the next point being that negative aspect with AI and being fearful of it. Again, it's the understanding of what it is. We're never going to truly understand how AI works. There's that black box, and it's there for a reason. It's the bit that you're never going to understand the logic of how that functions. I think at the moment, what we need to try to do as professionals is to understand that actually you're the expert. So why do you fear this thing? All it's doing is collating information and presenting it to you. As long as you've got the attitude of whatever it presents you, it's information that can empower you, then actually it changes things a little bit. And then you're no longer fearful of it. It's not it's like you say, it's not T3 coming out or T4. It's not there to replace us. It's purely there to enable us. And so if we can take that same attitude, because it's the same approach with things like vets always get frustrated with Dr. Google. Now it's Dr. AI or Dr. ChatGPT. It's something that's never going to go away. And the people will have access to these tools. So if we can enable ourselves and better prepare ourselves for the type of information that comes out and actually enhance ourselves from it, it's going to alleviate a lot of pressure from us.
I love it. I do. I may be strange, my general lack of knowledge and ability with tech, but I love it when clients come in and they've got something from Dr. Google, Dr. AI, because it gives me a basis for conversation with them. And I can say, look, yeah, okay, now I can see why they're saying that, and I agree with it, but, or, yeah, I think you might have wandered onto a site there that rants rather than gives advice, but I can point you to a few better websites.
Yes.
And I never get annoyed, because You can't, because as you
No.
say, it's there, it's with us now. And if you tell clients off for using it, then they're going to go somewhere else.
Exactly.
They'll feel belittled. They'll feel as though they've been made a fool of. But
Especially in today's day and age, where you've got millennials and Gen Z that are content hungry beasts. We like to research, and a lot of that is down to the fact that we don't like to waste people's time. I'm just as bad. I like to research into things because I don't want to ask stupid questions. And I know there's no such thing as a stupid question, but for me, I have a lot of respect for you guys and what you do. And I know how busy you are. I don't want to add to that load unless it's absolutely necessary. And so I think that's why a lot of people tend to go in with that approach of, let's just do a bit of research. Let's make sure that this is not stupid. What's changing things a little bit is with the integration of like digital triage services, is it's removing that barrier, because it's making it a little bit more accessible. Because that is the other aspect of people generally will go and interrogate and ask questions, because actually getting an appointment with the vet at a convenient time is quite difficult, especially when you're a working professional. I know that I struggle and I'll get home and it might be sort of 8 o'clock in the evening and, you know what, my vet's shut, so I can't ask that question. While with things like digital triage, it does open things up. So I think it is going to change things a little bit with that approach, because people can treat these digital triage services as almost like that Dr. Google or Dr. AI. So I do think that things are going to change as we move along, as the technology improves.
Yeah. You raise a lot of interesting questions as well as answering them there, actually, Jack, which I find fascinating. And it's one of the things that I find interesting that you say that you like researching. You obviously like computers.
Yes.
You like researching. You like researching other people's computers, don't you?
In a good way, may I add.
Oh, so you say that you do this in an ethical way.
Yes.
Most of our listeners would probably know this as hacking.
Ethical hacking.
Ethical hacking. That is, you say please and thank you after you steal my Facebook password.
I'll prompt you first. I'll give you a heads up, and then I might go and do something. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us more about this hacking thing.
Cool.
Actually, can you pull your hood up? So if we're going to talk about hacking, let's just see what we're. Oh yeah.
Oh, it's a hacker.
Oh, hang on. Lock down our computers. Carry on.
It's too late, Mike. You're stuffed. Again, ethical. I'm being honest about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. So it's always fascinated me. I like to know the unknown. I like to look into things, and
Like other people's computers.
The bit that fascinated me was, again, going back to the school days, was when I realized that there were restrictions imposed and frustrations, barriers basically put up. For me, it was like, how can I find a way around that? It's just like tinkering with things. You get a laptop, you want to take it apart and you want to understand how that functions and how that works. And then you can put it back together and you've got a better understanding. And that's where it all initially came from. And
this is a hell of a justification for trying to find out what the headmaster's watching after hours. Carry on.
It wasn't difficult. They just put it in front of me. If you do things in a set way, you're just making it too easy. But no, I think it's one of these things where it's, like I say, it's the unknown. And I realized that there was a bit of a skill shortage. There still is a skill shortage for this sort of thing. And I realized that I could do good, because the bit I find really fascinating actually is not necessarily the computer hacking side. It's the actual human perspective. It's actually capturing information from social engineering. It's those kind of things, because it's amazing what you can do if you're extremely convincing. I remember this was not done on purpose, actually. I remember going to a networking event, and it was right in the center of Birmingham. And I came to this car park and there was a security guard out front. And I was like, look, I'm really sorry, I'm running really late. I need to get in. And he was like, okay, no problems. What I didn't realize was it was one of Barclays headquarters. What they ended up doing was granting me access to their confidential floor. And it was only because I was so convincing in my approach that they allowed me access. And it was when I was wandering around, I thought, this really doesn't feel right, that I got evicted out of the building very quickly. But yeah, that whole side of things, the ethical hacking of people is the fascinating aspect. And that's why things like phishing and whaling and all these different techniques that are utilized to try and capture people's information. What I find interesting is, what do we need to do to try to limit that and to reduce our exposure? Go on.
I'm very familiar with the expression phishing.
But whaling.
Which is where people send you emails that are hinting that they know, and you've got to respond, and that's the way that you end up giving away your passwords and your details.
Yes.
What on earth is whaling?
It's going for the head honcho. So it's a more targeted attack to try to capture information from keep people within a business. It's something that you find a lot within other industries, not so necessarily within veterinary. If you were looking at the recruitment-based organizations or any other such organization, it's when they may go and publish particular information about their board or directors online or key personnel. And then it's that typical thing where the finance manager might be targeted, and it might be that actually, you know what, employees changed their bank details and they want it updated. And of course, that's quite a good technique, because of course, no one really questions it. A lot of people, because they don't have the relevant processes to go and validate this. So what ends up happening is they go and update the bank details. They don't communicate with anyone. They just reply to the email going, yeah, no problems. And of course, it's just come from a Gmail account. And most of us, we have Gmails, and they're our personal accounts. And then no one realizes until it gets to the pay run and the employee comes back going, like, why have I not received my salary this month? And it's, oh, well, you told me that you wanted to update your bank details. No, I didn't. And by that point, it's too late. The hacker's got the information. So it's a more targeted approach to senior members of a business.
It's a shame that hackers, as intelligent as they may be, don't realize that whales aren't big fish. I find it quite sad, really. Even AI, most basic, could tell you that.
This is the thing, and this is where I'm not going to do myself any justice here, Julian. Hackers aren't, in most cases, particularly intelligent people, especially in the new age. Just like with AI, how you can utilize tools to do pretty much anything for you. When I was learning to do these things and I played with these tools just from an understanding perspective, they were quite complex to utilize. So they weren't out the box. You couldn't just go and activate them and go and point them somewhere and it would just go and do its thing. Now it's so easy. You can download tools with no knowledge of what you're doing. And this is where you end up with sort of your green hat hackers, which is spotty teenagers that are bored, want to go and play with something, go and do something different. And they could end up going and doing like a denial of service. So flooding a business with requests, which could cause their business to stop functioning and stop working without even realizing what they've done, because essentially it's a tool that's just there and available to you. And there are also like things like ransomware as a service, which is another fascinating one where you can do a profit share with the hacker. So you can go to them and say, look, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a couple of people that I want to target. And what we'll do is we'll do a 80-20 split. I get my 80%, you get your 20% from breaching these particular businesses. The types of attacks, and that's where we as an industry are particularly vulnerable in that aspect of we have many low-hanging fruits, which is where we don't have to worry about like nation state hackers, the really intelligent ones, the ones that know what they're doing. Because why are they going to go after veterinary practice? Because that's the typical question. That's the resistance I get when I go and speak to people is, why would someone want to target my business? And why would they want to come after my practice? What information have I really got? And it's a fair comment. But it's the people that are targeting veterinary practices aren't knowingly targeting veterinary practices. What they'll do is they'll go and download one of these tools. And because you've got your door wide open, your practice door wide open, but in a digital sense, allows people to come straight in, deploy, whether it's ransomware, that malicious virus, or whether it's a piece of spyware or something that might capture relevant information. They're going to end up causing damage to your practice. And again, they have no intention of necessarily doing that to your practice. It's just you had your door open and it was just an opportunity for them. So that's what I typically see.
Wasn't the British Museum or the British Library hacked recently, wasn't it?
There's been lots of organizations that have been hacked recently. It's getting a bit ridiculous. And the types of situations of the quite large outfits that are being taken down by these types of attacks. So I have a two-pronged approach. For most of, because like I say, I'm completely focused on veterinary. That's all that I do. I don't work with other organizations anymore. We've got some historic clients that have been with us for many years, but we don't actively seek anyone that's not within the veterinary profession. That's how we work. For set organizations, and this will generally be associations, for example, BSAVA and corporates, they would generally come to us for advice for things like penetration testing and basically conducting a cybersecurity audit. So it's trying to find ways into your organization and providing you with recommendations on how you can keep yourself safe. Okay, so what measures do you need to implement to ensure that you are not going to be exploited and no one's going to take advantage of that particular exploit? And then the other side to it, which is generally for the independents, is you don't need to go to that level of detail. You don't need to go and conduct a penetration test. All you realistically need to do is provide them with some basic recommendations, some basic measures that they can implement to, again, shut those doors from the practice entrance, to stop these, cut off the low-hanging fruit so that they're no longer going to be a target. Because my attitude is not to create the next Fort Knox. To create Fort Knox is going to cost an absolute fortune. And even though that is an approach I could take, I feel it's an overkill for what it is that we need as an industry.
So if you attempt to hack once and you get in,
Mhm.
that's totally unacceptable, isn't it? So if you attack 500 times and you get in once, is that acceptable?
I think realistically, you've got to grade the types of ways in which you get in. Okay, so just because you've tried to attack it 500 times and you've been lucky with one attempt, that's not necessarily going to be your fault, because realistically, a lot of the issues that we face, a lot of them are human error. That is one definite aspect, which is about educating your team. That's the culture within the practice. But then there's also the aspect of the different platforms and tools that you utilize within the practice, and it's about your reliance on these third parties. Take the practice management system. A lot of them are going to the cloud. You have limited control of what you can do, other than ensuring you've got the relevant password hygiene and you're following best practices. But actually, that you are dependent on these third parties to keep you safe. So I think, going back to your point, I think there are certain circumstances where if I find a vulnerability within your environment, it's not necessarily a slap on the wrist from you. It's really, as long as you learn from that mistake, and it's not an obvious one. At the end of the day, it's get rid of the low-hanging fruits. They are the unacceptable ones. And I think where it's really unacceptable is if you've been educated on it and you still make that same mistake. That's negligence, and that's really bad. But like I say, whether it's I get in once or get in after 500 times, to me, it doesn't mean that it's unacceptable. It just, as long as you learn from it and you protect yourself moving forwards, I think that's the main thing.
Okay, so 1 in 500 is a reasonable risk assessment.
I think so.
All right, moving on from that then. Moving on from that.
You have walked into a trap.
Oh,
Jack.
here we go.
Computing can be quite boring, really, can't it? It's just sitting at a keyboard.
100%.
100%. Okay. I would imagine that you, like most people, seek alternative enjoyment outside of sitting in front of a screen. And you actually take that on and you go out there and you've got other hobbies and pastimes, haven't you?
You need to break away from the world of veterinary and technology.
Right.
It gets intense. It does get intense.
It does. And you like to break away big time, don't you?
Yeah, I need to disconnect. I'm a bit of a workaholic, Mike. I can't help it. And it's one of these things where, even when I get home, I like to keep occupied and, again, continue to learn, continue to develop, continue to improve. So I really do need that solid disconnect.
Before I reveal to our audience exactly what it is that I'm talking about here, is how many flights have you taken?
So I've actually done 6 with this particular thing. I've done about 678.
Oh my God! So I better get in quick then. Right. Okay. To bring everybody up to speed and our audience up to speed here, I'm being deliberately obtuse, because when Jack is not playing at a computer, he's strapping a flimsy piece of material onto his back and either jumping. Do you do it off cliffs or do you just do it out of aeroplanes?
No, just out of aeroplanes.
Because Jack is actually a very well known and very proficient, and I hope very proficient,
I'd like to think so.
wingsuit flyer, aren't you? Well, how do you describe that? What is that?
So there's a couple of ways I describe it. So flying squirrel, that's one way. And
A flying squirrel.
What I specifically do is, I suppose, synchronized swimming in the sky would be the best way of looking at it.
That's not making me any easier, because the 1 in 500, just to bring everybody up to full speed here, the 1 in 500 is that for every 500 wingsuit flights taken, one will end with an undesirable ending. Because when you smack into the side of a mountain at 250 miles an hour, wearing Lycra with a little canvas wing on your back,
You don't
the
bounce.
outcomes generally aren't that favourable, are they?
But you are wearing a helmet, aren't you?
Absolutely. I'm safe.
Yeah, we're not talking about cycling here, where if you wear a high-vis vest and a crash helmet or an egg cup on your head, the car isn't going to hit you.
You feel quite protected. I'll give you
Sure, that's the point.
I can relate to that. I can relate to pulling on some flimsy piece of fiberglass and thinking, I am the man. Right, bring on the hill. I'm going to throw myself straight down it now. Because I used to be a professional speed skier. But you lift off a little bit higher than I was off the ground
Just
here.
a tad, and normally I would say I have a bit more of a gap between the ground as well. It's the proximity flight, which is I actually did get to do last year, one of my dream flights actually, best thing I've ever done, one of the best things. And that was a bit of a unique experience. That's not my sort of normal approach, but equally I've got my boundaries with what I do because for me, I will not go and do things like base jumping or definitely proximity flight off cliffs and bridges and basic spans and things. Only purely because, like I say, the risk is too great. If you're lucky, you will survive a year. And that's where things like the metrics that you quoted, that's linked to the fact that wingsuit flight and specifically base wingsuit flight is intertwined with skydiving wingsuiting because actually the number of safety measures and protocols in place within skydiving it makes it a really, I know it sounds insane to say, but an extremely safe hobby as long as you follow the rules. And I know it sounds really ironic, but it genuinely is.
What you're saying is that the people that jump out of aeroplanes with these wingsuits on are improving the statistics for those people that jump off cliffs.
Well, ironically, if you take it used to be the British Parachute Association, so that's what it used to be called, and they're the organisation behind the sport. They actually ended up rebranding as British Skydiving to disassociate themselves from the base community to again help with the statistics. Because again, it's a completely different. I know there's similarities in the sense of yes, I could jump off a cliff, and yes, I potentially could fly my wingsuit down there and be absolutely fine. But it's a different type of flight. It's different equipment as well. So you fly an entirely different parachute. So, for example, if you take my parachute, my rig, it contains 2 parachutes for a start, and I've also got an AAD, which is an automatic activation device. So, in theory, and there have been scenarios where this has happened, not with me, thank God. But there's been scenarios where people have jumped out of a plane, gone unconscious, and landed absolutely fine. That is purely because of these different measures that you've got in place. If you reach a certain height, it will fire off your reserve and you will land, in theory, touch wood, safely, depending on where you land, obviously. But again, that's where you would choose where you jump from, and you generally jump from specific drop zones. So at least you know where the potential hazards are, so you can be extremely safe. Yeah, it's a great discipline. And for me, like I say, it's that focus, it's that disconnect that I very much appreciate, because it's once you're in the sky, that's all you're thinking about, both from a wonder of what you can see, because you're seeing a different perspective, which is incredible. But it's more to the fact that you're focusing on what it is that you need to be doing as you're going through the particular routine. And the competition element has added a bit more of a twist, which I do enjoy.
Competition.
You've been pretty successful, haven't you?
I have. Considering how I've not been doing it for a huge amount of time, honestly, I never thought I'd be a wingsuiter. It's genuinely a dream come true. I know it sounds ironic, but I remember still, and I've actually got that particular advert, and I'm never going to forget it. And I've got the soundtrack in my head, M83 outro, and it was a Red Bull advert, and it was incredible. And I remember sitting in the cinema, and I think it was just before Matrix. I was quite young, and I remember watching this advert, and there was a particular element of a wingsuiter jumping off a cliff, I think it was. And bearing in mind, wingsuiting has only existed since 1993. That was when it became commercialized and became a main thing, or main route thing. And even then, it was still, there aren't that many people that did it. And yeah, I just remember looking at it going, oh, that's amazing. And again, going back to my granddad, who was the one that inspired me to all of this, he's always had a passion for flight. Well, he did. And he had shares in a Piper Cherokee. So I used to fly with him when I was a kid and got these incredible opportunities. So got the bug. But it was just that aspect of human flight. God, that'd be awesome. And it was only by chance. So when I got to my 31st birthday, I think it was 30th birthday, my brother said to me, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, oh, "Don't worry about it, whatever." And they were like, "You keep on banging on about you flying. Why don't you go and do a skydive?" And I'd done a tandem jump back in 2014, and oh my God, it was dull. Being attached to a big burly bloke, I'm really sorry, it's not my kind of thing. And I thought, and it was raining on the day, and it was just not pleasant. And I thought, I'm not gonna do that again. But I tell you what, after that first jump, what a hook, what a drive. I've never done drugs in any way, shape, or form, but wow, adrenaline was such a hook. And just got stuck into it and got dragged into a team. Seemed to be okay with it. I picked it up, which is rare because generally with sports, I was never particularly good at school. But this particular thing, actually falling out of the plane, as people say. But just one of these things where I just got into it. And so I joined a four-way team. And it was only at an amateur level, so very much rookie. We ended up going to gold at the nationals. So we did the regionals, did the nationals, got gold. And it was just like, oh, wow, that was amazing. But during that process, because of the hard work we put into learning and developing our skill sets and training, I actually met the criteria for wingsuit. So getting to wingsuit level is a challenge. It's one of the more difficult disciplines to get into within the skydiving world, which is understandable because there's a lot more complexity with it. There's more things that potentially could cause you, like nuisance factors, would be the best way of putting it. So they generally want you to be more experienced and more capable before. But the aspects that I thought was quite interesting was I stumbled across this wingsuit coach. And again, they're like, it's just so difficult to find people that have this, that can do this. So he taught me up and I got into it and I got absolutely hooked. I'm not an emotional person, but after that first jump, I was just like, that was just awesome. And from there, I just started mucking around with it, met a few people, actually went over to, there's a wingsuit tunnel in Stockholm. And this is something I would say to anyone, if you ever go to Stockholm, go to this wingsuit tunnel. It's not particularly expensive and you can experience wingsuit flight with no background experience at all. So my wife's done it. She's never skydived before ever in her life. And she got a feeling of what it was like. And it was absolutely amazing. But basically got drunk at this tunnel, decided to go and enter into these competitions and decided to put ourselves into the advanced category. Don't know why we did that. So glad we did. And actually ended up nailing the competition, which was fantastic. So ended up resulting in us being the national champions and representing GB, which is super exciting.
Incredible.
That is
Absolutely
exciting.
amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That is exciting. Yeah. Does everything go still and quiet and run in slow motion for you?
Yes, yeah, it's like the adrenaline pumps. I'd say that I'm not complacent at all. I never want to be complacent with it, with anything that I do. And obviously, this was a bit of a first for me, so it was a different style of jumping. So it did go back to like I was a new skydiver, so it felt incredibly slow. But with all these jumps, time does go slowly, and I think that's because you're in that process of just you'll take this. It's sensory overload, I think is the best way of putting it, and you're taking everything in, and you look back at the video and you go, God, that was a lot quicker than what I thought it was. That went on for a really long time. And it is very much that you're able to look around you, take everything in, look at all the detail. And it will never leave here. Or I hope it never does, because it was just, the detail is incredible. And the video just doesn't do it justice. It's a memory I'm never going to forget. And it's something I'm going to hold on for forever, which is amazing.
Sure.
It is.
It looks awesome. I would love to do it. I think my wife wouldn't let me, but I'd love to. She doesn't really want me to climb the Eiger, I'll be honest.
I can see the hook with it. I genuinely can. It's an incredible mountain, absolutely incredible. And again, I think we were very lucky with the weather. Everyone was saying that the weather's not been like this for such a long time. It's clear blue skies. And even then we were battling against the jets because they were doing training. The Air Force were doing training. So of course, what that meant is that when they did their routines, so that there were no incidents, we had to drop down to about essentially the peak height, so about 10,000 feet. But luckily, we only had to do that on one jump. The rest of it, we had clear blue skies, and it was almost like it was meant to happen, which, like I say, I've been very lucky with my whole skydiving, wingsuiting journey. And it's just like everything's just clicked into place. It's like it is generally feels like it's meant to be. It's like it's all been set out for me, which is super exciting. And I'm looking forward to obviously what the next stage looks like, because lots is set for this year. I'm hoping, obviously, we were set to be doing the World Championships in Israel. Unfortunately, with everything going on, that's not going to happen. So there are talks about relocating it, hopefully, and I really hope that they do. And I'm very much getting stuck in now to try to mentor people, support people. I'm one of the British skydiving coaches. Again, I love to educate people, share information. That's one thing I really thrive on. I do it within the veterinary space. Obviously, I love talking about my topic and my subject to try to enable people. And again, same thing with the...
Don't take this the wrong way, Jack. Please don't take this the wrong way. You're working in the veterinary space. You're working with surgeons a lot. And, of course, the adage in medicine and veterinary medicine is, and I don't know that you should be applying this to wingsuiting, is see one, do one, teach one.
Yeah, I'm already wondering when I can get round to teaching my first lot of students how to fly a wingsuit.
how to wingsuit. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because, of course, you haven't done the first jump yet, have you, Julian?
Well, I have done a parachute jump. It was
Okay.
a static line.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
like you, I didn't want to be tied to some burly gentleman jumping
No.
a plane, so I thought I'd do a static line. And it was 30 years ago, I think, pretty much. And I can still remember it.
I mean, the static, but this is really interesting. So I read up a book recently. I think the book was called Birdman. Really interesting take on someone's journey through the skydiving aspect and going into base and all that sort of stuff. And one thing he said was that the first, I think it was 5 seconds of the jump, he can't recollect. And I agree. I can't remember my first 5 seconds of my first skydive. I went down the accelerated free fall course route, which is just a slightly different take. It's where you essentially jump out with two instructors. They're not attached to you, but you experience a bit of the free fall without the cord pulling out your parachute. But did you find that? Can you remember that first 5 seconds? Was everything?
Well, I remember sitting at the door.
Yep.
And I remember going, oh, and then looking up at the plane. I don't know. I must have done the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 check kind of, because it was so ingrained to do that.
Yes.
But I can't remember doing it. All I remember was, fuck, that plane's already quite a long way above me, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think it's a common thing. And again, it's that sensory overload. And that's exactly, you learn to handle that and deal with that so that you're not having these moments of blackouts. But like you say, it is so ingrained into you. I mean, it's like with my reserve drills. That's something which I must do, I think, 9 or 10 times before I get even on the plane, just so that in that incident where something does go a bit sideways, because it is a statistic, these things do happen, and that's why you've got these secondary measures in place to keep you safe. You don't think about it. And when I had my first malfunction, literally, it was just, it's like something took over my body, and it just went, and it was like done, and it was like wow. And even at that time, everything went into slow-mo. It was like you're going into that fight or flight mode, which is right. I now need to make good decisions. And even though actually, like I say, I didn't really need to make any good decisions. I just needed to pull that lever there. And even if I didn't pull that lever, it was still popped out for me anyway. But obviously you don't ever want to rely on that.
But it was second nature.
Yeah.
And there was a base jumper that died fairly recently. I heard that, I don't know how true it was. The reason he died was that he packed his parachute incorrectly and didn't check it properly.
Yeah, ironically, one of my photos, he was one of the guys that actually photographed I did a photo of me very recently with my wingsuiting. So I landed and he gave me a high five. Really nice guy. Nutter, absolute nutter. And it was a bit of a shock, to be fair. It was one of my friends that messaged me and said, oh, I don't know why people do this. They send me through like fatality reports. I never know that. But thank you. But yeah,
they love you
and
they want you to be careful. They want you to be careful because they love you.
100%.
It's like sending a smoker a photograph of someone's lung cancer
and planting it on the cigarette boxes. But yeah, no, and again, this is it goes back to the AI comment of it's just the lack of understanding. And that's why people take that approach, which I fully understand. Because like I say, base and skydiving are entirely different disciplines, entirely different. I'm not in that situation. And the argument is, could I make that same mistake if I was in this place? Yeah, I probably could. And especially, and this is where there's that whole aspect of being complacent. And that's why I say I never, ever want to be complacent, even with what I do. And like I say, I regard it as extremely safe because I do follow the rules. I don't do any low-based things. For me, it's all stuff in the sky. I'll muck around and I'll do lots of crazy fun stuff in the sky. But when I get to a certain height, that's where, for example, using the canopy, using the parachute, I don't want to do low turns. I don't want to do swooping. I don't want to do any of these particular things. I don't want to do canopy formation stuff because that's my life-saving device. That's the thing that's going to get me to the ground safe. So I don't want to muck around with it. I just want to let it get me down nice and safely so I can put my 2 feet on the ground and go and do another one. That's the key.
Sure. And that's why I don't solo climb. I don't free climb. I have a buddy, shall we climb with most of the time, and we do a buddy check before we climb. Mate, check the harness, rope, and we always do it.
It's such a sensible thing to do, and like I say, there are lots of these things across the different disciplines, and you can tell the one that the sports that have some form of regulation or discipline because they do enforce these things into you, which I see it as a real positive. Because the end result is you end up with a great system, a great environment full of great people that are willing to share and share knowledge and share information, and you get to experience some amazing situations and experiences, which I think is the key, and that's why we do all these things. All three of us have got a extreme hobby to a point. I know
I don't do anything dangerous.
I don't believe you.
Yeah. How are those polar bears, Mike?
Whatever.
Honestly, I'm still blown away by the photos you showed me. I showed my wife your Instagram page because it's incredible, absolutely incredible.
Mike's photos are amazing. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now, we've learned a hell of a lot, and I'm running out of ways to segue this because on Veterinary Ramblings, of course, we've got the tradition. We've got two traditions that they've just flown by. The whole time has flown by. Pardon the pun. And we haven't done our signature 60-second CPD challenge. Have you got a
Yes.
60-second CPD for us, Jack?
I do, and it's partly what I was talking about. So let me know where you want me to fire off, and I will give it a good crack.
Oh, okay. In that case, then, Jack, thrilled that you are up for the 60-second CPD challenge. What is your 60-second CPD on?
It's on cybersecurity and specifically around passwords and how we can keep our practice safe.
Okay, so Jack Peploe, 60-second CPD on cyber security and keeping ourselves safe, starting now.
In the veterinary world, we go to great lengths to secure our premises at night, yet digitally, we often leave the door wide open. So picture this, it's the end of a long day, and instead of securing the practice, you leave the key outside with the sign inviting anyone to take it. This key not only opens your practice, but also the branch down the road, as well as even your home. Now, this is akin to what happens when we use simple, repetitive passwords for different platforms, including both work and personal accounts. It's a widespread issue with consequences ranging from data theft to financial loss, not to mention the potential breach of client trust, which is invaluable and even in really awful cases, severe disruption to your personal life. Now, our brains are better at remembering stories or unique combinations rather than complex sequences. So hence the 3 random words password technique isn't just secure, it aligns with how our memory works, making strong passwords memorable. For example, combining sunset, fridge, elephant. This creates a robust password that's easy to recall but hard to crack. Furthermore, multi-factor authentication, or MFA as it's also known, acts as an additional security checkpoint. Even if someone manages to guess your ingenious password without that second factor, like a code from your phone, they won't gain access. It's essentially a layer in today's digital defense strategy. Now, interesting fact for you, did you know that 97% of breaches are actually as a result of human error? On that basis, security isn't just about prevention, it's about culture. Creating a culture of security within your practice means making these practices common among all your staff, ensuring everyone understands the why and how behind these measures.
Excellent. Excellent. And that keeps us all safe.
I let it run. It can be a two. Yep. I think it's an important topic, and I think it's something that we all get very lax with.
Yes. And I think there were 2 topics in one. I think we had a bonus CPD.
I think we did. I think that was a bonus CPD, and I love the idea of a three multi-factor.
Yeah, so going down the 3-word method works really well because it makes it super easy to remember things. It's always good to have things like password managers because they will make your life easier, whether you use things like a web browser or actually a dedicated password manager, which is the preferred option. But, actually having a password, where it doesn't have the complexities in it. It's the same thing with regards to when you're encouraged to reset your password on a frequent basis. So let's say every month, that's going to put you into bad password habits, which means that your passwords are going to be more predictable. So actually, sometimes it's better to have, say, a password that might contain 3 words and actually only change it every 6, maybe even 12 months, which is what we generally recommend.
Interesting.
See, I tried to use the other day. I tried to use bourguignon as my password, but the computer wouldn't allow it. It wasn't strong enough.
Oh, the amount of times I've heard that, Julian.
What? You mean it's not new?
Once is enough.
Do you still see people doing 1, 2, 3, 4 things like that?
All the time. Yeah.
Really?
The thing is, we're going through this phase at the moment where we're still, most practices, you go up to a computer terminal, and both of you will know this. Generally, there's no password on the computer. That's a common practice with most veterinary practices. And everyone uses the same password, and they're generally shared passwords, and they go to quite important and confidential things. So I think we're now going through this gentle transition at the moment where we are going into the process of actually having individual user accounts. And I'm not going to name particular PMSs. You get some PMSs where the password is actually the PMS name, and you just think, oh, wow. And it's the same for every single practice. So if a hacker gets into one practice, it's the same for every single one. And it's mental. It's mind blowing. But if you don't know anything different and you don't understand the risks or consequences, then, it's not your area of expertise. You're not to know. And then that's one thing that I try to do. That's where the certified ethical hacker bit comes in. It's trying to promote and educate people as best as possible to, again, do the right thing and make sure that the obvious things are covered.
I've been trying to use the automated password construction things on the computers.
Yes.
But that scares the living bejesus out of me because I can't remember 6.
Or this is, I honestly, I know one of my passwords. That's it. I don't know any of the others. And it is a brutal password. It's not 3 words, it's a lot more than 3 words. And something that no one would guess. So it's not going to be the obvious one as super fast car jumping off mountains. It's going to be something that's completely not related to me in any way, shape, or form. And what I do is I utilize these password managers that create these generic passwords that are really long and really complex, because obviously that's what it specializes in. But the nice thing is no matter what device I go on, as long as it's something that I manage and I have control over, it just puts the passwords in for me. So I don't need to worry about that. And all that I need to worry about is making sure that I've got a solid master password, so a very secure central password, and that I've got that multi-factor authentication in place. So similar to what you use when you go into a bank, you've got those stupid little card reader things, or you might use the mobile app. It's the same theory. And with the way that these systems work now, it's really seamless. So you go to log in and it sends a notification to your phone, you press accept, you've got it because you've gone through that 2-stage. But not only that, with the particular password manager that I use, I also get a notification on my via email to say that someone has tried to access from this location. So you can set in like conditional access rules to add that extra layer of security if you wanted to.
Do you think that Jack Peploe wingsuit is safe, do you?
That's the one I've got, Mike.
That's
what I've got.
I'm logged into his computer right now. I can control everything. Brilliant. Yeah.
I was teaching at a practice a few months back. I clearly won't say what practice it was, and I said I was doing some ultrasound training, and I said, "So what's the story behind this patient?" And they said, "Oh, it's on the clinical notes." I said, "Okay, how do I get onto the computer?" It's passwords written on the side of the screen. And use Jeff. It's not Jeff. I made the name up to save the individual. But there was a whole heap. There was a list of people, their passwords.
Yeah. So I went to a practice and they're really proud of this, but I still will not mention them. They have a password wall, which is, it's actually within the practice. You can go to this wall and find the relevant password. And we try not to give away stuff at things like the conferences and things, because for sustainability reasons, that you don't want to have extra stuff that can be thrown away. But we do actually use sticky notes. And on the sticky note, it clearly states, do not use for passwords. And it's great how many people pick up sticky notes, but at least we know that they've had that warning to say, do not use this, because it's so common.
Sure.
And yeah, you get it. But again, there's simple changes that can be put within the practice technology ecosystem to just simplify things. So you don't have to worry. You can have that added security without the added headache. Yes, you're never going to be able to have that perfect system where you can walk up. I say never. You can, but it's going to cost a lot of money. But you can't expect to have the sort of system that you can just walk up to a computer, it identifies who you are and logs you straight in. There are technologies that will allow that, but it's just a cost aspect at the moment. Sure. But in time, that will change, and it will be able to identify us, similar to Windows Hello. And I know Mac's got its alternative too, where you can literally go up to the computer if it's your particular machine. It sees your face, it logs you in, you're away. Within the veterinary world, the challenge we've got is because we don't have assigned machines. We hop between lots of machines within the practice. You might use 7 different machines in a day. So it just adds that extra complexity. And you can use things like smart cards, and there's lots of other tools that you can use, but it's just trying to create that like affordable solution. And it's trying to take things in bite-sized chunks. Don't reinvent everything right from day one. Let's just try and pick our battles and slowly make that improvement.
And make some sensible choices. I remember it was only 10 years ago when I was doing special forces stuff, and the guns were only shoot with our own fingerprints on the trigger. Hold on, well, no, that wasn't me. I'm sorry, that was a film. Sorry, it's a film I saw.
You're so convincing.
Very realistic, very realistic. But I would say your 60 and a bit second CPD is incredibly informative and teaches an old hack, but you're a hacker and you're younger, an old non-tech like me, better ways of keeping safe on computers, which is very important. And I think we can log that as CPD, can't we, Mike?
Well, yeah, have you got a certificate?
Well, I have, but actually, yeah, let's do that. And then we need a reflective question, don't we?
We do.
But I have got a certificate.
What do you want to do first, Jack? Do you want the certificate first or the reflective question first?
Oh, I think we should do the reflective question.
Okay. Have you got a reflective question for our audience?
Yeah. So reflecting on the metaphor of leaving keys out for the taking, consider your current digital security practices. How might the approach of using 3 random words and multi-factor authentication transform your practice's digital safety And what steps will you take to ensure you're not inadvertently inviting cyber threats into your professional and personal digital homes?
Great question. I know the answer to that. Pick up the phone and call our mate Jack. and
There we
he'll help
go.
you through it.
Yeah, that's the best
There we
way.
go.
And don't, dear listeners, please don't think 3 little words. So if I work out where my computer is and do the 3 little words on that, I'll
Vet
always
Consult
know.
1.
No, don't do that. Excellent. So now we can comply with RCGS regulations for CPD, which means that you get a certificate, which is the certificate of winging it.
Oh, I love it.
Do you like that? So the little pun on it for IT. Yeah.
Winging,
And what I've done,
winging IT, is it?
winging IT or winging it.
Oh, you're a genius, Julian.
I think
No,
that's
I don't.
incredible.
We are
what
not
I-
worthy.
What I've done is to help you a little bit here, Jack, because I've put a series of things that can and should fly, and a series of things that can't and shouldn't fly, just to
Yeah.
help you, because I think you have a bit of difficulty distinguishing. So here we go. It's some planes. There's a Hurricane and a Spitfire. Now, I'm going to tell you this one can and should fly. Yeah. Okay. And here's me on top of a rock doing some acrobatics. Can you guess this one? I'll tell you this one's the first one. This is can't and shouldn't fly. Okay. Then. A bat. What do we think?
I think it can and should fly.
Can and should fly. That's right. And an elephant.
That definitely shouldn't fly.
But
Big
it's got
ears,
those.
big ears.
Yeah, they are big ears. There's
are.
potential there.
But no, I think you're right. Can't and shouldn't fly. Okay, here we go. Now, a flying squirrel. I've given the game away a little bit there, but a flying squirrel.
It can part fly.
Yeah, so can and should we say? And me walking up a mountain.
It depends on how quickly you want to get down.
I'm going to go for can't and shouldn't there. Here we go. Seagull.
Definitely can fly.
Penguin.
No.
Wasp.
That I see them fly.
It's dirty baby corn. It's not just wasp, is it? Yeah, good. And me on flying buttress direct.
You could go flying there, but
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
not advisable.
I didn't. The bloke after me did, but he
Really?
shouldn't. That's the point. Did but shouldn't have.
That's awesome. I love that certificate. Learned so much as well. Does that add to my CPD?
That's
Absolutely.
just the ED. I'll send you the certificate.
Absolutely. And any of our vets and vet nurses, if you are a vet and vet nurse, although not all of our listeners are, but if you are, then yes, that's definitely. In fact, that was almost as good as your finals, wasn't it? That was almost like finals at vet school.
It was longer, I think, than the finals.
It probably was, but I think it got a bit tricky there with flying squirrel.
Yeah, I know
Listen.
that did throw me.
Yeah. You
Notice
listen
how I
to the
put flying
question.
squirrel, which can and should fly,
Yeah.
and then flying buttress direct. Yeah,
Yes.
a little bit of a
that is true.
trick one there.
Yeah. That was tricky stuff. That was amazing.
Excellent. But no, you've passed that. I think. Well done. Come on.
That's
Loaf of bread
fantastic.
and that. I don't know what else you've got this coming my way.
We've got lots that could be coming your way, but sadly, it's time for us to say thank you very much indeed, Jack Peploe, for sharing an insight into your life with us at Veterinary Ramblings. And to our listeners, if you've enjoyed listening, get in touch with us, send us an email and ask us some questions and give us some suggestions as to who we should be getting on to ask questions to. So click like, share, and please subscribe because it makes a big difference to us and it does help. So,
Really does.
from Mike at Veterinary Ramblings, Jack
And from
Peploe,
Julian.
thank you so much indeed. May your dog go with you.
Thank you very much.
May your dog go with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And cut.
Yay! There
Oh,
we go.
mate,
Awesome.
That was
Absolutely.
great
Mate.
fun.
that was
We-
brilliant. Have you
we
enjoyed
only-
yourself?
I have. That was really good. Thank you very much, guys. Really enjoyed that.
No, it's fantastic. I can't believe the time it's flown. It's amazing.
Literally.
We overuse the word awesome, but actually you are, and this one. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much.